Hello ladies and gents, welcome to Underdogs. As the name of this series will suggest, this is where I'm going to take apart the components of your pedal board and try and address some of the pedals that I feel are vastly underappreciated in the pedal world and how they might fit the slot on your pedal board that you've been looking to fill very nicely. But before I get into today's video, please like, comment down below with your thoughts and make sure that you're subscribed. So as the name of this video series suggests, and as I just said, the Underdogs series is all about exploring the many different possibilities that your pedal board could benefit from in the pedal board world. So I kind of wanted to break down categories of pedals that most people look to add to their pedal boards. In the first installment in this series, you'll see that I put together a board that I think best represented this Underdogs idea. There's 5 different categories of pedals. So we started out with reverb, delay, modulation, overdrive and fuzz and distortion, and what I'm going to do from now on is break down each of those categories and provide 5 further alternatives that may just fit the right spot for you on your board. So to kick things off, I want to start left to right, if you will, on the pedal board format. So I'm going with reverb today. Okay, so in that first initial video you'll have seen that I put the board together and I used the Topanga Spring Reverb from Catalinbread, and I kind of use that as generally an always on sort of a foundational kind of a reverb sound. Now a lot of players do that either with reverb in their amps or with a reverb pedal on their board, but there's also a lot of scope in the reverb pedal world to look at pedals that maybe provide a very distinct effect type of a sound. So rather than using it as just a foundational thing, you might want to use a reverb pedal to actually provide a very specific effect tone, and that's where some of these alternatives might come in as a better option for you if that's the way you want to do things. So I'm still running this in exactly the same way I did the first video. I'm using a Dr. Z Maz 18 with no reverb on board whatsoever. So all the reverb you're hearing in this video come from these individual pedals that I've got on the board today. Also, I just want to point out that I'm using a Fender American Ultra Strat today, and I really wanted to kind of emphasize some of the best reverb tones that most modern guitar players go for, which is a very, very clean melodic Strat tone. And I'm using each of these reverbs in turn to provide a really nice kind of sonic bed, or a duvet if you like, that's just very warm, very much in the background kind of a reverb sound, but can still step out to the forefront if you want to use the effect in that way. Alright, so I want to start out today with the Hook reverb from Keeley Electronics. Robert Keeley makes quite a few really nice reverb pedals, in fact, and some of them are a little bit more specific to either old amp style reverbs, or he also makes pedals that are more suited to recreating larger room effect type reverbs, like the Abbey for example. But the Hook reverb kind of sits somewhere in between the two. It's actually quoted as being a neo-vintage spring reverberator, so I guess it kind of gets its influence from amp style reverb, and I was using it mostly in the middle mode here, which is the spring mode. I think this pedal's got quite a lot of that sort of springy, boingy life to it, which is what some people like to get out of their reverb pedals. But if that's not the thing for you, then you've got a tone control, and you've also got 2 other modes here that you can switch between, including a fugue mode on the top, which kind of adds in a weird keyboard organ type effect. It's kind of like an octave thing that you have individual control over, and then also at the bottom you have the addition of a tremolo sound that's added to this, which you can once again control. So there's actually quite a lot going on here, but in the way I'm using it today, just more of a kind of traditional spring type sound with a lot of nice splash and depth, I think it works really well, and it's nice to know that you've got those other options on board as well. Alright, so next along is this, which is the little Wampler Faux Spring Reverb, and it's the mini version. This has always been one of my go-to just standalone spring reverb pedals. I think it sounds really good. Wampler have got a really good ear for these kind of natural phenomena that kind of just appear in the guitar world and how to bottle them in pedal format. The Faux Spring Reverb sounds very, very ampy to my ear, but with the benefit of a tone control, you can actually make this sound a little bit more ethereal and a little bit more ambient, and that's kind of what I'm doing today. I wanted to go for a little bit more of a pushed out reverb sound, not so much just an amp reverb in a box type thing. This can do that very well, but it can also go a little bit further and push into more of an ambient thing, like I say. You also have the added benefit of being able to run this pedal up to 12 volts for increased headroom too. Third up is the JHS Spring Tank. Now, JHS pedals have also had quite a history of making very, very nice reverb pedals. They've always kind of gone for more of an ambient type of direction with the Alpine reverb and pedals such as that. The Spring Tank, though, was, as the name implies, just their take on recreating the best attributes of old amp spring tanks or standalone tube-driven spring tanks as well, with a few added benefits to it. So, for example, you've got the switch between tank 1 and tank 2, and basically that is an overall mix control that you have the power to switch between two different preset settings on the fly, which is really nice. You also have a built-in effects loop, which you can use to, I guess, add a certain effect to the trails of the reverb only, if you want to do it that way. So once again, you can just step further out from the traditional amp spring reverb type thing and go in a more modern direction. You've also got quite a lot of controls over the shape of the reverb. So for example, the length or the dwell. You've got a high control, which is basically a tone control. Depth as well, which operates kind of the lower frequencies of the reverb. And then you have a boost control, as you would have done on some of those old tube-driven spring reverbs. If you want to push the front end of your amp or just match the levels more easily, this pedal will facilitate that as well. And you've got top-mounted jacks on this pedal, which I always think is quite an important thing to factor in when you're making a decision for your pedal board in terms of space. Alright, so I want to move on to a pedal from Fender, and Fender's pedals don't get nearly enough credit that they're due, I think. They make some really great designs, and this Tre-Verb pedal that they've made is actually, could be considered as a little bit of a Strymon Flint killer. And as the whole series of this Underdogs thing is about trying to provide some alternatives to the pedals we see all the time, loads of people love and use the Flint for very good reason, and I guess this is Fender having a stab at it. But with Fender's mind behind this product, you've actually got a lot of experience in terms of recreating some of the very best reverb sounds of all time and tremolo sounds, which naturally stem from Fender's amplifiers. So I'm using the reverb today in very much an amp springy type way. I'm using the 65 mode, which I guess kind of refers to the mid-60s blackface era style amplifiers. sounds great for that, and it really can get nice and splashy and ambient as well. So they've kind of, you know, taken a few liberties with the classic amp spring sound. You can get a lot out of this though, so I just think this is a really nice reverb. It's got really cool LEDs on it as well, which I think is a massive plus in terms of your pedal board, once again, if you're playing on dark stages. And you've got the added bonus of using a tremolo circuit, which, as you'll hear at the very end of the clip, sounds really nice, sounds very ampy, sounds very natural. So great pedal here if you're looking for a kind of alternative to that 2-in-1 Strymon Flint kind of a thing. Right, so lastly, I want to revert back to the original reverb pedal that I put on the first Underdog board you would have seen, which was the Catalinbread Topanga. This is the Talisman reverb, which is, as opposed to a spring, this is a plate style reverb. So a little bit more, if you want to consider the spring to be a 60s type verb, 60s amp type verb, the Talisman with a plate type verb moves you a little bit more modern, kind of into the 70s and 80s tones. It's a little bit harder. It's also a little bit more dynamic, I think. It sort of sits in the background a little bit more. You could say it's a little bit more musical, maybe. It doesn't get in the way as much as a spring verb does, but it's got the same really, really impeccable quality that the Topanga has in terms of the way it processes your signal. You've also got a nice lot of control over it, including a pre-delay control, which really means that you can get this completely out of the way of your guitar tone if you want to, just by expanding that. Then in fairly typical Catalinbread fashion, you've got an overall mix control and an overall volume output level, which is great once again if you want to boost the front end of your amp or just match the levels more easily. Really nice sounding reverb, and I happen to think it's one of the best looking pedals that I've ever seen as well. So there we are, 5 more Underdogs in the reverb pedal world this time. Stick with us for the rest of the series as I delve into the remaining 4 categories of that original Underdog pedal board that I laid out in the first challenge. There's 5 clear alternatives here, and hopefully you'll be able to pick a favourite for yourself, and if you do, let us know in the comments below what you think makes a great reverb pedal, and also if you think there's an Underdog of the reverb pedal world that you think I've missed in this video. So that is it for now. If you want to find out any more information about any of these pedals, check out peachguitars.com by clicking the link in the description below. Once again, make sure that you're subscribed to the channel and that you ring the bell so that you're notified of all future video content from us. And until next time, take care, and I'll see you soon.